freaking awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Greg. All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming out tonight. This evening I'll be going over everything skiing and flying. I'll basically take you through everything from what you might need for your first flights on skis, all the way to what goes into the good spring combo missions that my friends and I have done in the past. Feel free to ask any questions as I go along. I probably won't cover every aspect of everything I would want to talk about, but yeah, feel free, ask questions. I'm going to start with a little sales pitch video I made. I'll get Jeremy to fire that on right now.
That's good, man.
Fuck yeah.
Like butter. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So skiing and flying is really good. I don't know what else to say. It's just really good. I mean, where would you rather be right now?
A lot of like, ooh, whenever I land on like hard ground with skis, but the grass landing is actually super easy going on skis. Like, you won't damage your skis doing that. And another, do I gotta go in there? Oh, I have to be on the camera. Okay, gotcha. I'm going back over here. So yeah, in that last clip too, I mentioned, where would you rather be right now? And for me, it's a no-brainer. I love skiing and flying. I do it all winter long, but I'm sure there's a couple people in here that would be like, I'd rather be in Colombia, actually. But anyway, so I figured I'd start from square one. I grew up skiing in Ontario. My dad got me skiing by the age of 3 in a little place called Devil's Elbow outside of Bethany, Ontario. We went every weekend for years and years and years. Those are my 2 little brothers there. They joined us, and we were basically weekend warriors. It was full on. Like, we'd go there for first chair all the way to last run every single day, no matter if it was minus 25 or raining. I remember rainy days. I remember my hands being freezing going up the chairlift. You're like, Dad, I can't feel my hands. I can't feel my hands. He's like, just stick them in between your legs and wiggle your fingers. We're staying till last run. So there was this really deep-seated, passionate approach to skiing that my brothers and I were all brought up with. And that stuck with us for the rest of our lives up to this point. So yeah, as I grew, I didn't miss a single season of skiing. I kept at it thoroughly every single year. In my 20s, I moved out here to British Columbia. I came here for the mountains, pretty much. So it was obvious that the first thing I did was get a job at a local mountain teaching skiing, and skied as much as I could. I got into backcountry skiing a few years after moving here, and I thought that was the most amazing thing ever. Like, it was just all-consuming. The possibilities were limitless. The lengths you could take it were huge. You could explore so many different places. Anyway, along came flying. Now, flying definitely added a third dimension to my skiing, and that was a beautiful thing. And I'll just get you to switch to the next slide here. So yeah, that's Devil's Elbow Ski Hill outside of Bethany, Ontario. You'll notice, they put these Paradise is 1,800 feet. No, that's the length of the run. Vertically, the ski hill was 100 vertical meters. It was tiny. So yeah, you could imagine skiing here, run after run after run, when it's like minus 20, doing the same run every time. Anyway, we loved it as kids, and until I moved out here, I didn't know any better. So there you go. So I'll get you to switch to the next slide. So skiing and flying. Like I said, I moved out here, I evolved into backcountry skiing, and then along came paragliding. Ever since I think it was just after my first bunch of flights under a paraglider, I started to realize, like, oh dude, I'm totally gonna ski and fly. Like, it's a no-brainer. I don't remember going and thinking that prior to taking my P2 course, but it didn't take me long to realize, like, oh yeah, I'm mixing this. I'm mixing flying with skiing fully. So the first flights, so these are some of the basic things I would think about before flying my first ever flight. So the first thing is flying skills. When I started, I had a season of flying, took my P2 course, graduated, did a bunch of flying, got in some active air. I wouldn't say you need a lot of crazy good flying skills to launch a paraglider on skis. I think it's more the launching that you'd really want to focus on, specifically forward launching. So yeah, I really don't think, there's much to focus on for like specific flying skills. Launching, landing, kind of knowing how to, judge the air mass and everything like that. And decent skiing skills are almost more important, if you ask me. Launching a paraglider in perfect conditions, forward launching in easy snow, it's all you got to do is ski down the hill and like hold your A's and your wing comes up. But if I had a nickel for every time ski launching wasn't like that, I'd have a lot of nickels. So the skiing skills come into play for launching, especially because you've got to be mobile on your feet. And if you're not a super experienced skier, that could be probably pretty difficult, especially for a reverse launching. So another thing is adequate terrain. I wouldn't go out there on just any terrain to learn how to do your first ski flights. You want kind of a big open bowl with pretty mellow slope angle at the top. I would suggest like kind of a convex shape, not convex on an unstable day that goes into a 45-degree slope or anything, but mellow convexity, so you have kind of a progressive way to pick up speed while trying to launch your wing. Another chunk of terrain you might want to think about is your LZ. My first flights were above a big frozen alpine lake, so that was the perfect situation. It was huge. It was like football fields, so there's no issue there. And that way you don't need to worry about which way the wind is coming from, because on skis you can land downwind, doesn't matter. Ideal weather, obviously you don't want it blowing 45. It's pretty easy to get out in the mountains and know when it's a good day or when it's not a good day. You're gonna feel it in your face. So a nice bluebird day, light winds aloft, and the next two, a pair of skis and a paraglider, obviously. All my ski flying has been done in the backcountry, so obviously I've got full touring gear and Avi gear and all that stuff. I won't touch base on much of that, because I think those who have all that stuff, they already know. And if you're gonna get into touring, there's a whole world of learning you're gonna do anyway, so So my first flights, so I finished my P2 course that midsummer, did a bunch of flying, and I think I immediately in the fall, I think I called Jim Reich and I was like, get me a string harness. I'm going to go ski flying. So I ordered a string harness, which is like a 300-gram little harness. So it's a lot less volume to lug around if you're touring up into the mountains. So I got all set up, and I think this was like November, my first flights on skis. I just couldn't wait. Like, I didn't even know. This might have been the first ski day of the season. I lugged my paraglider up to Steep Peak up in the Duffy Lake Road. Anyway, you go to the next slide. So yeah, that's my buddy Shawnee. I don't fly with him much anymore, but he was there for all the firsts that both him and I did on skis and under a paraglider. Yeah, we went on a lot of really fun, adventurous missions together. I figured I'd throw that slide in there because, yeah, that guy's a character. He's awesome. Here's a little video of my very first ski flights. For the wind noise. Oh, the first ski flights. This would have been 2015. This is Steep Peak, or Dark Side Lake is where I'm about to land right now. So it's a fairly popular backcountry skiing destination up in the Duffy Lake Road.
We are on Roar again.
Here's another video of later on in the season.
For a little tour.
I had done a whole bunch of ski flying in between.
Wind's perfect.
The video you just saw.
And I'm about to drop into this.
And this was pretty special because it involved thermaling with skis on my feet, which blew me away. Like, I was totally stoked. It was an unlocking of the potential that lay ahead. Well, I'm the Duffy Lake Road again.
Oh, it's freezing fucking cold up here. It's fucking cold up here. Oh. Oh.
So yeah, I launched off of Mount Roar in the Duffy Lake Road.
Oh, God.
This one.
Holy fuck, I'm freezing. Holy shit. Oh.
So as you can see, I was pretty excited. Like, I was on the moon at that point. I had just thermaled and I was honestly up there for I think over 2 hours, freezing my ass off, just because I thought it was amazing. Like, it was like, I could go land right now. I've had enough after the first 45 minutes. Like, I'm gonna keep this going. Like, this is amazing. Like, who else is out here right now thermaling with skis on? And like, yeah, it was unreal. So yeah, very exciting time for me. Like I said, it unlocked the potential for me, the known potential. Now that I knew I could, launch a paraglider on skis and thermal as well, it was just like, oh, cha-ching, it's on now. Anyway, so what I learned over the first season of flying and skiing. So the first thing was that full-size wings are a little much, which, yeah, for ski launching, like, they can be quite sluggish. The lines on a full-size paraglider are super long, which makes it pretty hard to set up, especially in powder. If you've ever set up a paraglider in deep powder, it's actually kind of challenging. Like, you've got to tromp around and like, oh shit, yeah, my wingtips all tucked in there, and you've got to walk back up to it, and before you know it, you've tromped out like this huge hole in between you and your paraglider. And yeah, there's snow on half your lines, and yeah, it's challenging. So with a smaller wing, that kind of mitigates a lot of that stuff as far as just setting your wing up. Yeah, like I said, they're sluggish on inflation. So the smaller, lighter wing you have, the quicker it's going to pop up when you want to launch.
Will you go with single skin?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a slide a little down the road here. But yeah, for sure. And I did have a single skin. That was the first mini wing I bought. And I used it for years, and I took it on a lot of adventures. Yeah, I got a lot of good things to say about them. And there's pros and cons as well. Like I kind of mentioned before as well, a lightweight string harness is the way to go. You can also go reversible harness. Like I've got, a couple friends over the years that happily go up with a nice lightweight reversible harness. They're probably a lot more comfortable for longer flights than string harnesses. But the one thing I didn't like the idea of with a reversible harness is that it's not quite ergonomic enough for me to feel comfortable skiing with. Like it doesn't have, that ski touring shape bag to it. You can't fasten an ice axe to it if you want. Like you can't strap your poles in the right way if you want. So that's why I went with a string harness, so I could use the backpack that I wanted to, that I'm used to ski touring with. Just more versatile that way. Another thing I learned is winter air is different. I can't tell you how many times in the first year, and even every year in between the first year and now, I've gotten up into the Alpine to launch my paraglider, having looked at forecasts and gone like, okay, yeah, it should be doing this, it should be doing that, this should work here. And then you get to the slope and you're like, shit, it's not doing anything I want it to. Like, what's going on? There's a lot of different stuff that happens on a cold mountainside compared to what we're used to flying paragliders over in the summer. Like we're used to sunny slopes creating thermals for us. And there's a lot of dynamic air that we fly through in the summer as well. But yeah, there's differences in the winter, and I'll go over that in a little bit down the road here as well. Huge thing that I realized after the first season of flying is I needed to prioritize skiing more. Because I'd go up there with buddies that didn't fly, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go over here, and then I'm gonna launch over there. You wait for me, right? Yeah. So you're basically going up there, allocating all this time to like flying logistics, especially in the early days, because I needed more time to do what I needed to do to fly. And then, realize your buddies are sacrificing their day and their time for you. And it's just like, oh no, I can't keep doing this. Like, it's one thing if you're out there with a crew and you all have the same goal, like you're all flyers and you all want to go to this launch, and that's cool. But I needed to prioritize skiing as well. Take a look around, when you're out in the backcountry in the mountains, this is dream ski terrain. Like, I can't just come out here just to fly a sleddie. Like, it's like, I've flown enough sleddies, even, by the end of my first year, that it's just like, okay, I think every pilot goes through that process. As you gain hours under a paraglider, at first, sled flights are amazing. Like, you just want them. You're like, I want to fly, it doesn't matter. And then as you get spoiled, with thermic flying or cross country, you're like, sleddie, I could take it or leave it. But anyway, so yeah, that was part of my mindset there. I was like, okay, if I'm just going to be flying a sled flight, like, I need to ski the shit out of this mountain first. Like, I can't just go all the way up this mountain, skin for like 1,800 vertical meters and then fly down and call it a day. It seems a little empty. Anyway, so yeah, the next one is to bring a reserve or not to bring a reserve. So that's a tough one. In the first year, I brought a reserve for pretty much every flight that I did on skis. And I did realize that there's a lot of days where the air was completely calm. There's not a lot going on. There's no thermic energy happening in these snow-covered alpine bowls. You might get a little bit of that happening on sunny slopes, but honestly, the majority of flying that I did on skis was based around ski terrain, so chances are I was actually on a shady slope. So anyway, I did realize that, okay, the air is pretty friendly. It's pretty tame unless there's weather coming in or funky stuff happening. So I ultimately made the decision to, on days where I thought it was just going to be a chill sled flight, to not bring a reserve. And it was a lot of volume out of the pack as well. And that coincided a little more with my prioritized skiing kind of point that I was making. I could now ski with a smaller bag, and literally ski with all my flying kit, no problem. So now, I'm not going to stand up here and go, oh yeah, you shouldn't bring a reserve ski flying ever. I think that's going to be up to whoever wants to go and try this. Like, I wouldn't suggest just, no going the reserve at all. That's just the route I took and still take for most of my winter ski flying, just because it makes sense. I also, at this point in my flying, I'm pretty good at judging what the air is going to be like to fly through. Like, if I'm up in an alpine ridge and kind of have a really good idea what the wind's doing, what ridges are doing around me, and what it might be like in the middle of the valley or over by that ridge or this ridge, I've got a pretty good idea on, the turbulence I might put myself in. So yeah, I think a lot goes into the reserve, no reserve question. But yeah, that's basically my take on it. Anyway, next slide. So season 2 and beyond, getting after it with a purpose. So like I was just kind of starting to say there, if I'm out with ground dwellers, follow through with ski objectives first. So yeah, I really focused on that. Skiing with your buddies all day and getting the really good runs, and then trying to use your paraglider as an exit tool was much more appealing than, saying, hey guys, I'm going to go over here and be an asshole and screw up your day and fly this stupid sled flight. So, I basically started doing, using flight as just an exit. And it's an amazing way to avoid a bad ski exit, which in the Coast Range, we get a lot of pretty nasty exits, especially early season. So there are many days where the skiing's really, really good up high, but getting back to your car is just terrible. So that is, like, to this day, I think the perfect purpose for a paraglider in a pair of skis, basically, is just to get you down to your truck and avoid the bad snow and the challenging exits. It's a really cool way as well to link up different terrain features. I've done a couple trips where you'd go out and you'd go up one mountain, and you'd literally, whether you ski or run or not, you can glide over to another mountain, and then you can tour up it and ski a line there, and then you can glide over to another mountain or back to your car. It's a really, really interesting way to do a day of skiing in the backcountry. It kind of broadens the amount of terrain you can access. It really adds another dimension to skiing in the backcountry. I think a big part of backcountry skiing for me, and climbing and flying, is just the challenges that you're posed. Over the days, over a day, whatever. I've always loved planning for things, planning out logistics for missions, throwing in extra challenges along the way, and paragliding just complemented backcountry skiing for that. So now I have to think about, how do I plan my day in this mountain range over here? What aspect should we ski? What's the stability like? What's going to ski best? And to add on flying logistics, like, okay, what's the air going to be like? What aspect can I launch off of? What's the weather going to be doing 12 hours after, and all that stuff. So I really like that. It adds a whole other dimension to skiing in the backcountry, just challenge-wise. And then, adding to the quiver is another thing I thought about after I got done with my first year. So.
Steep Peak Ridge.
Yeah.
The wind is fucking perfect. So that's where I'm going. Caspar. We'll either land in that basin, skin up and
the
over the
avalanche
ridge.
stability stuff?
into that
You
other
pause
bowl
that?
or land over in the other bowl.
Oh, he's not pausing it. Oh, there we go. Sorry, say that again, Al.
Checking out different, like if you're going from one part of the mountain, you're going along the spine, you're saying you're hiking up. You thought you might check that out. What do you do with avalanche safety issues?
Oh, I mean, yeah. At this point in my experience skiing in the backcountry, like you never stop learning about traveling through the mountains and the avalanche side of it. I'd like to think I've gotten pretty good at assessing what's going on with the snowpack over the years. I think to truly move freely through the mountain, you've got to go beyond just like, oh, I'm going to dig a pit here, and oh, the avalanche rating is moderate or considerable here. Over the years, it is quite possible to develop a really, really fluid way of, observing, assessing, changing your objective as you go throughout the day. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. I could probably talk for hours just on that subject alone, because there's so much to cover. But yeah, it's a very important thing, especially if you're like, oh yeah, I think ski touring is cool, but I love ski flying. I want to go try that. Like, you are going into the mountains, so you definitely want to be very aware of what you're getting into. The backcountry is a pretty real place. Anyway, you can. If it plays. I bring. Yes. Yes, I do. So this is a little ski fly traverse I did from Steep Peak all the way to Cirrus Creek, and it's kind of a cool example of like the distance you can travel with a paraglider and a pair of skis. So here I am heading towards Mount Caspar, and I'm going to land in a little pinner opening in the trees.
And here we are.
So landing on
Caspar.
snow is
Pretty stoked. All
actually
we got to do is
really,
go up and over Caspar.
really
and
cushy. You can land
advantage,
going uphill.
Duke Call, and
I don't know exactly where I launched from. Somewhere over there.
So now I'm basically kind of traversing terrain on Mount Caspar, and then I'm going to climb to near the top of it,
well,
and then I'll launch again and then fly way over there somewhere. And this was a solo trip. Like, this is a good example of just getting out there on a solid day with great stability and good conditions and just going. What's that? No, I don't have a reserve for any of these.
looks like we're putting her down here. So we're in the lead and we're going Catabatic. Here we are, pretty close to Vantage Duke. Dropping in on random places in the mountains and covering ground. This is ski fly touring. Let's see how this terrain is that I have to negotiate to get down to Twin One Lake. Yeah.
What's that?
We are getting there. We're there. We're there. Fucking blowing down here.
My original thought was to keep going. Here's a little map of where I started. So kind of over on the east end of the Duffy, I started up by Steep Peak, and then I made the glide across to Mount Caspar, skinned up to a high ridge on it, and then flew over to Duke Vantage Col. And originally, my idea was to keep going and then go up to Anniversary Call or Mount Mathieu in Joffre area, and then like continue to push it a little farther. But by the time I got up there, I had noticed the wind came in. Everything was basically in the lee. And then I could have snuck a flight in from like vantage maybe if I really tried. But yeah, the weather that was coming in was kind of a little funky. Like I didn't like the the feel of it. And it was a really good call because by the time I got back down to like here, down to the subalpine, like the small stunted, you know, trees in the subalpine were actually bending a little bit. So it's amazing, you know, what can happen mid-valley, like mid elevation on a mountain wind-wise, even though you've experienced the whole day's just been like, oh yeah, it's been calm, it's been really easy going, and then a couple hours go by and it's like, oh dude, you wouldn't want to be in the air at all. So you got to be really careful when you're in the mountains in the winter. Weather can change quite rapidly. Anyway, we'll take it to the next slide. So this is another, I didn't edit the video together for this one, but this is another little traverse I did, which is basically a continuation of what I just did, where a buddy and I, we went up, summited Mount Mathieu, and then went up Spetch, another mountain in the Joffre group, made a flight down to this ridge that gave good access to Duffy Peak, which is, yeah, that's pretty familiar terrain as far as summer paragliding around Pemberton goes. And then we made a glide all the way to the to Mount Currie from Duffy Peak. So that was a really cool ski fly traverse. We got to summit a couple mountains in the Joffre group and then make a final glide down to like, you know, Valley Bottom and the rodeo grounds in Mount Currie. That was a really cool day. So the lightweight get down wings. So yeah, they're much lighter and less pack volume. I think that's obvious. That's such an asset to skiing with a glider. I can literally ski all day long with this glider in my bag, in my harness, and it doesn't hinder me one bit. And nobody really knows it's in there. If you have non-skiing buddies and you don't tell them you're bringing a wing, like they wouldn't know until you pull it out and go like, see you at the truck. But it's amazing, today's technology, like these wings are built so well, they're actually quite safe, which I should have mentioned before when it came to the reserve, no reserve discussion. Some of these mini wings are actually really docile. They're not, there are mini wings out there that are very sporty that I wouldn't want to fly in like kind of wild conditions, but yeah, there are some that are very, very tolerant to shaky air. They feel quite safe. Anyway, so one big asset to mini wings is they have shorter lines. So as far as launching a paraglider in the snow, I mentioned before with the full-size wings having super long lines, is actually, yeah, the canopy will pop up faster and it's more likely to follow you. Like if your glider wants to track that way, but your ski direction is that way, you've got a better chance at controlling, you know, correcting that glider to follow you if the lines are shorter. It's just simple physics. Easier to manage on launch. Not so much ground handling wise, but just to set up and lay the wing out. Yeah, like I said before, full-size wing, that's a lot of surface area you got to lay out over the snow. You know, sometimes there's wind involved and your stuff's blowing all over the place. Sometimes it's a steep slope. And stuff wants to slide down the slope. So the smaller glider you have, the actual easier it is to set up. And yeah, easier to ground handle for sure. Like, I don't know, not everybody owns a mini wing, but if you did get a chance to get out and kite a mini wing on a nice windy field, you know, kind of test it up against your full-size wing, it's amazing how fun and easy these things are to kite. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, you can just kind of, you know, play around with it. It requires, you know, in my opinion, much less finesse. Yeah, they're a lot more forgiving. In the air, they're also quite often more agile and more fun, which is kind of cool if you're just using it to get down a mountain. Like, I don't need this thing to thermal well. I don't need it to glide like ridiculously amazingly. Like, this isn't my glide machine wing, this is my get down wing. So to be able to kind of roll it right into some nice wing overs or have a little bit of a divey property to it is kind of fun. It can make your way down the mountain Yeah, have a lot of laughs. So best sizes, I was, battling whether or not to like put that in there because I think, it's arguable. I've got friends with 13 meter, 14 meter mini wings that honestly fly like small little paragliders. Like they're not sporty. Like if you buy an entry level speed wing at 13 or 14 meters, yeah, that's a speed wing. That thing's gonna, it's gonna have teeth. But yeah, these little 13, 14 meter mini wings are actually pretty impressive. That being said, my choice has always been kind of 18, 19 meter. That's what I've owned. That's what I know. 16 meter, I after flying my single surface paraglider for a few years, I was like, I had an 18 meter single surface, and I felt like I should have gotten a 16 because it would have felt more loaded. Some of these mini wings, yeah, when you do the math on like loading per square meter, thinking like, oh yeah, this is going to be a hot wing, it's much less than 23 square meters, what I'm used to. But in all honesty, some of these mini wings are designed to fly under heavier loads. So yeah, anyway, that brings me to talking about the single surface glider as well. Yeah, so that's the one I started on. I think they're great machines. Like the perks of a single surface paraglider, it takes like nothing to launch them. Like I can forward launch that thing and have it above my head in like 2 or 3 feet of travel on the ground in no wind. It's amazing. And that's not much of an exaggeration either. Like these things are impressive. Like you can launch them off scary places, like scary small launches, like and I have a couple times. It's quite impressive. I wouldn't say go do that, but yeah, they have their perks. One thing that single surfaces really suck at is flaring. So if you get a single surface paraglider and you go and land somewhere with a little rough ground, I think that's your real risk right there. I've had a couple landings with my 18 meter skin on like river bars, like rocks beside rivers, and you get dropped because it's windy or whatever, the air is doing funky things, and yeah, they come down hard, like they have no flare. So with a single surface paraglider, I learned to focus, like mine has little trimmers on them. So I open my trimmers to get as much energy out of the single surface glider as I possibly can, and then try and dive into a landing. So you're basically bringing in as much energy as you can for flare. Because if you come in slow on a single surface paraglider, there's like no flare. And I know there's numerous different models out there. Some may be a little better than others, but I think it's pretty much probably the same throughout all of them. It's just what you get. There's pros and cons. But yeah, single surfaces, they fly well. They're quite boring to fly. They're so docile and like dampened in every way. They're actually really safe. It's amazing. Like I've gotten little tit tucks on the thing, and it's like, oh, it reinflates like in a quarter of a second instead of like 1 second that would be on my normal wing. They're quite safe, but yeah, they're not very energetic. Like if you try and do a wing over on a single surface wing, especially an 18 meter size that I'm used to, it's impossible. You can't even get that thing to roll. Like it's crazy. So yeah, and that's why I kind of switched to a double surface wing, because then you get a little more performance out of it. I mean, the flare on this wing is amazing. You can land it wherever. On launch, when it's windy, especially on skis, one thing I got tired of with my single surface was dealing with wind. Now, a single surface, it's like putting a giant umbrella in front of you on in a hurricane. Like when you expose that single surface glider to the wind, to like 25K gusty, switchy wind in the Alpine, that thing wants to do everything. Like it's really hard to handle a single surface paraglider on a high mountain ridge. Whereas when you get a double surface, it's going to act more like a real paraglider, much easier to handle. Yeah. Hope that answers a little bit of single surface questions. All right.
House Sound crest and fly, buddy.
This is just a little
You can
video
see the
of-
steep terrain, severe mountain weather conditions are a hazard, but they don't say anything about flying in outflow. They should put that on the sign, Ian. Outflow winds for your exit flight may be a hazard. The snow is top notch. The outflow is pumping, but that means we can hope that it subsides while we burn a lap or two.
So this is a day Ian and I did a couple weeks ago, actually. We did the House Sound Crest Trail and went skiing.
It's pretty good snow. Wow, that is nice. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Woo-hoo!
That's behind the West Lion. It's actually a really beautiful place. Like if you have a get down wing and you know the area and where you have to land, like it's an amazing place to go skiing, but it sucks to get down from 90% of conditions we have because you got to go back down to sea level.
Ow!
Yeah, I've done many days up here, whether I came up from Lions Bay or landed here on a combo mission, but I've done many days of skiing up here and ended up just flying down after, and it's such a cool place. It's a cheeky way to not have to suffer.
We just picked up our stash. Ian's got his stash. I've got my stash. Now we're gonna make an easy go down to the vehicle. Hey, buddy. Dead calm down here. Oh, hello. Oh, yeah. Oh, big hug from Ian, his glider. Woo!
All right, yeah, that was a really fun day. Yeah, like I said, that's a beautiful area to ski, but it really helps to own a paraglider to get down from there. So yeah, speed wings. It was like an immediate thought for me after a couple years of paragliding and then getting into skiing and flying. I was like, oh, speed riding looks delicious. Like it was something I couldn't hold back from. But yeah, they're definitely, it's its own thing. It's an acquired taste. I think, if you're thinking about getting it, for winter or because you like the idea of it, yeah, it's definitely, it's its own realm. They're definitely not paragliders. You can't fly them the same as a paraglider. They won't handle the same as a paraglider. Those are kind of just really basic things, differences. They demand so much respect. Like when you take one of these things out into the backcountry, yeah, things could go bad so fast if you screw up. That being said, on a good day, if you treat these things with respect and learn how to use them, yeah, they're absolutely amazing. Like I think this is one of the coolest things I've ever done is gotten into speed riding. Yeah, you can be skiing turns on kind of a mellow slope over an ice fall of a glacier and literally just ski off of it and then look back and you're like, oh, there's a bunch of seracs. Cool, I'm gonna bank a turn. Like it's pretty amazing. They allow for a lot more interaction with terrain. Like I said, like the idea of speed riding is, you're skiing with a canopy over your head, and whenever it makes sense to take flight, you take flight. I've never really gotten to the stuff they do in the Alps, some of the real the real G's out in the Alps, like doing the crazy, awesome speed riding lines. Like, I don't have a speed riding wing that small. I've kind of downgraded in sizes very modestly. Like, that's an 11-meter speed wing. That's the one I currently have. It's actually a little big for speed riding because it just wants to fly. Now 11 meters for foot launching that's a very ideal small size. Like, it's a no bullshit size. But anyway, it aligns better with ground dwelling skiers. So if you bring a mini wing or full size wing or whatever up the mountain with your skiing buddies, and you're like, okay, yeah, there comes a time where you have to be like, yeah, I'll see you down at the valley bottom. You're totally splitting up logistically. It's a pretty major thing. Whereas with a speed wing, you could actually do the same lap that your buddies are skiing with your speed wing, and it's pretty cool. So your buddies can have eyes on you. You can have eyes on your buddy. And ski the same terrain, ride the same terrain. It's a pretty versatile thing, and that's one of the things I'm on a continuous mission to just kind of refine my gear ups and my gear downs, so I can just be as efficient as possible. So I can totally casually just bust out my wing and do a lap alongside with my ski buddies and pack it up as fast as possible, which is easier said than done. I'm a little bit of a yard sale too with my gear sometimes, but so these things are very fast, but they're also very fun. So I'll get you to play the next clip. Here's a little riding video that I put together for the past couple days, the past couple years. Yeah, so that's a little preview of the fun you can have with a Speedwing. It's pretty amazing. I've taken my Speedwing out to a lot of different zones in the backcountry and had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, I guess one thing I did learn is, that the air that you fly through is really important with a speed wing. Like, you can't just be like, oh, it'll be a little bumpy, but it'll be fun still. It's like, no, it won't be fun. If the air is going to be bumpy, you're not going to have fun. So it's got to be really, really clean air. If anybody does want to get into that, just like, it's not worth it if you've got a whole bunch of katabatic air and, outflow aloft, and it's just like, oh, the wind direction looks good for this slope. It's like, no, it's going to be crap, and it's going to scare you. So, calm air all the way. All right, so to go through what I put in my bag, this is all pretty normal stuff as far as a ski touring bag goes. You got your Gore-Tex shell, puffy, soft shell, gloves, all the stuff you'd expect to see in a ski tourer's bag. I guess one different thing that a lot of skiers might not have in their bags, although a lot of them do nowadays, it's becoming quite more common, is the satellite device, your spot or your inReach. That's a pretty important thing, I think, for if you're going to take flight in the mountains in the winter. Like, the bad situations that you could be in if you treed yourself mid-mountain, it's pretty serious. You kind of want to have comms. If you're with your buddies, definitely have radios. I've gone on so many missions, with a buddy and I. So it's just the two of us, and you've skied all day. It's getting dark. It's minus 15. Your buddy gets off, and he's on the way to the truck in the air, like, woohoo. And then, it's been difficult on launch, and then you're like, shit, conditions are changing. And, like, if you don't have a radio, it's kind of like, oh, dude, like, if you're the guy at the truck who successfully flew down, you're looking up, you're like, where's my buddy? Like, there's a lot of mountain in between me and him, and he could be anywhere. So I think radios are worth the wait if you're going out in the mountains with a paraglider and a pair of skis. What else? Fishing line. Just in case you do end up in a tree, I think, same subject as we've all kind of gone through with paragliding in general, is to have some sort of apparatus to ferry your rope up so that you can be retrieved out of the tree. There was a couple of years when I started ski flying, I would literally bring like an old climbing rope and some slings and beaners and stuff, and I'd tell my buddies, I'm like, all right, if I tree myself and it's by the highway or whatever, this stuff's in this bag. You just skin over to me and I'll drop a fishing line down to you, and then we could do a self-rescue. So anyway, fishing line I think is a really, really good thing to have on you. It could speed up rescue out of a tree, which would be important. In the winter, like, it's one thing to be treed in the summer. It's pretty warm, pretty nice. In the winter, like, hypothermia is a huge issue, really fast. Like, you don't want to be in that tree for long. Anyway, thankfully, I've never come close to being in a tree. Like I said, most flights I've done in the winter involve pretty cool, calm air. The rest of the stuff on the list, skis, boots, skins, poles, a wing and harness. Big one for your ski poles. You don't really want to, although you can, you don't want to strap stuff on the outside of your backpack when you're launching a paraglider. It's just more chance that a line can get caught on something. And in a forward launch situation on a deep powder day, and there's so much going on, if it's a difficult launch, like, a line snagged on a ski pole on the side of your bag could go unnoticed and end up like putting you right in the ditch somewhere to the right. I don't know. It's I have those 3-piece old Black Diamond expedition poles that I can collapse down, fit all the way in my bag. That's one piece of advice I would give on that. The launch. So there's so much to say about the launch. I think it's the most difficult part of ski flying, because it's so variable sometimes. You can get amazing conditions, and if you look up on a snow-covered mountain, on the right aspect, on the right day, it's just like, dude, there's hectares of launch up there. It's crazy. It's like, how could this be difficult? And some days it's not difficult. Other days it's quite complex to find a launch that's facing the right direction, has the right slope grade, all the above. Yeah, I would say the most important thing is for sure the launch and finding the launch and some of the techniques going into it. And I'll get you to the launch. This is a little video of like a whole bunch of launches I've done over the years. Just a collage of launches.
Yeah! Woo! Woo! Yeah! You want it? Yeah! Woo! Yeah, buddy! Oh God, yeah.
See, I'll get you to switch one more. This is I figured I'd jam this again. This is Mount Mathieu, with the summit of Mount Mathieu with the speedway. I figured it definitely should be put in here. It was a pretty wild experience. So yeah, this was one of those things where I was like, I bet you I could launch a wing off of the summit of Mathieu, like, and it became this thing. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna wait for the right day, and maybe I'll just try it. And yeah, the day came along. I was like, oh, I'll go on a little solo mission. The snow is quite stable, and the winds look decent, so I gave it a shot. And yeah, and I'll get into this in a little bit, but yeah. On in the high alpine on a mountaintop in the winter, the air rarely just goes up the mountain and hits it perfectly at Ridgecrest. Like, no, it always slides over from the sides. Like you'll very rarely on a northern-ish aspect anyway get the wind coming straight up to the Ridgecrest. Like, it just doesn't happen. Anyway, so yeah, the forward launch, even if it's arguably reversible. So reverse launching on skis in a lot of different conditions is far more challenging than forward launching. So if you're on some slope, you're about to ski launch, you're like, oh, I bet you I could reverse launch this. Like, I'd like to see my canopy. I'd like to see if all my lines are clear, all that. If it's arguable, I'd just go forward launch. Because screwing up a reverse launch and then having to reset up in the snow is so much more work than when you're just on foot. Like, it's just, especially if the snow's deep, it's a lot of work. And again, the launch itself, reverse launch itself, is far more difficult. So I would totally, if it's one or the other, I would stick to just forward launching. That would be my advice. So location. It's so dependent on the conditions of the day. You know, sometimes in the mountains you'll have these beautiful little spots perched on ridge crests with nice easy rolls into the slope that are perfect for launching. And then at the same time, you can have a lot of terrain that doesn't allow anything on ridge crest, even though you're tempted to try. It's quite a bit more exposed sometimes. So yeah, I find the most success I've had is like just under ridge crests. And again, I'll mention like more northerly aspects because that's generally where the best skiing is. I find it's usually better to be just underneath ridge crest on a slope that's, you know, obviously oriented into the airflow that you're getting for the day. But yeah, on a nice terrain feature that's a little more forgiving, maybe not, you know, off of a steep ridge crest. Lay the glider out from above. So yeah, it might not be intuitive at first, but laying out a glider from below it, you're going to tromp out a whole bunch of post holes in the snow, especially if it's deep powder. That's going to make a mess of your lines. Like, not that you're stepping on your lines, but your lines are going to droop into all these post holes that you've made with your feet. And it's just going to be a mess. And especially if you're forward launching, you're not going to, you know, you're going to have a harder time looking at all your lines and, you know, seeing if they look good if there's just post holes everywhere. So what I like to do on especially deeper powder days is track above the canopy and lay it out, like spread out the canopy span-wise from above. Try not to kick snow in your cells. If you do, no big deal. Hopefully you have a little hanging spot for your glider at home. But yeah, it's much nicer not to tromp out the area where your lines are. If needed, anchoring the wing to the slope is a good idea. So what I do for this, on a steeper slope, like if I'm kind of pinched and it's just like, oh, this is the only slope I can launch off of that has terrain fall out from underneath it, enabling me to stay in the air and not bottom out, I'll have to go up onto a steeper slope. In which case I'll literally, usually just with my feet, punch a couple holes in kind of just behind where the leading edge is going to sit. Some days I've actually just walked a whole kind of leading edge glider shape in the snow before I pull my wing out, and then I can lay my wing on this kind of tromped out, you know, post holes or foot marks, and then put some snowballs in like the groove that you've created on top of your wing. So I usually do that maybe like a foot behind the cell openings, a foot behind the leading edge. That way your anchored glider is not going to get blown away from like a downslope breeze, which, you know, if you're setting up for a forward launch, you know, chances are it's going to be calm, maybe a little bit in the face, but also maybe not. Maybe it's a total tailwind, like a light tailwind. So the tacoing of a mini wing is quite easily done. So yeah, anchoring is never a terrible investment if you're on a steeper slope, even if you don't need to, even if you're like, oh, my glider's going to stay here, a little gust from the side or the back will screw your whole game up. And like I mentioned just a minute ago, like resetting up your glider in deeper snow is a pain in the ass. It takes way longer. So yeah, that's gone a long way for me. I've used that technique quite a bit, and it works. Yeah, slope angle and snow quality play a pretty big role. Yeah, as far as snow quality goes, deep snow, obviously, like if you try and get out there and ski really mellow terrain after it snowed like 3 feet of nice powder, like you're gonna find there's too much pow to ski fast enough. So the deeper that pow is, the slower essentially you ski. So you need a little bit steeper of a slope to kind of gain the speed that you would need to launch. So yeah, some days, you know, the snow is going to be firm where you're launching, and then it's not an issue. Like you could be on a super mellow slope and then do a forward launch and your glider's just going to pop right up. You're going to have nice acceleration just by you skiing down the slope. But yeah, if it's deeper snow, you're going to want to go and look for a steeper slope angle to get your momentum up, to pop that canopy up. Yeah, preferably convex, because that enables you to have kind of a nice curve of acceleration. Like, you know, start with a slow jolt and then accelerate as your wing comes above your head. Try and lean forward during the inflation, especially if you're getting a bit of wind in the face. That's one thing, you know, you don't realize might be a thing if just from foot launching, you're always kind of leaning forward if you're forward launching, like you're going for it. On skis, you've got, you know, rigid ski boots, and you're used to skiing centered on the balls of your feet on your skis. So if you ski forward, there's a little bit of wind coming at your face, and you pop your glider up, that glider is going to yank you right back. So I've had it happen myself, and I've watched it happen to my buddies over the years, how it's just like, oh, they've got this perfect inflation going on. It's like, you know, it's a really quick inflation, and then it just yanks you back on your ass, and then your launch is pooched. You're like, oh, no. Anyway, yeah, so leaning all the way forward is not a natural feeling on skis. Like, you don't see me going like this on a forward launch, but like just a little bit definitely helps. Yeah, and if it's really like, if there's no wind in the face, it's deep snow, you're not going to have a lot of acceleration. Leave slack in the lines. So that just kind of enables you to gain momentum before you come in contact with, you know, the glider before it inflates. So like if you start a launch on a super mellow slope and you have no momentum, that wing is just going to be sluggish. It'll never hit that critical point where it wants to just rise overhead. So leaving a few feet of slack in the lines, and then just like skiing down, and then you hit the slack, or then you hit the canopy, that'll go a long way. All right. So this is a good forward launch. Here's Ian.
Fabulous, dude.
So you notice it did jolt him back a little bit. I don't remember if there was wind in our face then, but you could kind of see it when that canopy inflated. Kind of gave him a little jolt. That was the same spot from one of the last videos. That was over the Howe Sound, so the back side of the Lions. So the reverse launch, I mean, the biggest thing for a reverse launch on skis is you're just gonna have to go out and try a whole bunch of them, because you can't teach every little bit of it just through words. It's a feeling thing. But yeah, a few things that I'll say is holding the A's and C's as a launch method works best. Reason being is, unlike foot launching, you're not squared up with your wing facing it. Your skis are facing perpendicular to that. Usually, sometimes it's a little different. But yeah, so you want to keep that initial action of inflating the glider. It's not going to be square because your hips aren't square to the glider. So yeah, holding on to the A's and C's is a good way to kind of square that initial tug on the glider up to get a decent inflation happening. And once the wing's kind of in the air, things seem to kind of iron out as they go. But yeah, it helps to be an ambi-turner. So countless times I've been on slopes where, like I mentioned before, the wind never seems to go straight up the slope. It always goes up on one angle or another. It's just what it does in the mountains in the winter. So I've been in a situation where it's like, I'm used to turning left in my reverse launches, but the way the wind is oriented and the way the slope is oriented and where my glider wants to go, I now have to turn more than 180 degrees if I turn left and just do this big thing and waddling on skis. Whereas if you're used to just turning the other direction, it'd be much easier. So I think that's easier said than done. I know when I first learned that this was probably a good idea to practice, I had no clue. I'd never thought that I'd ever need to turn right on a reverse launch instead of the way I normally do it to the left, but it does come in handy. But yeah, you got to be ready for the glider to pull you uphill if it's strong. I've done quite a few thermic launches with full-size paragliders on skis in good cycles, and yeah, it yanks you, and sometimes it yanks you uphill. So you've got to just let it pull you uphill. I usually start with my bottom ski perpendicular and my uphill ski kind of pointed in the right direction, And then by the time I inflate the glider, I'm ready to align both my skis as if I'm skiing uphill and just let the glider tug me. That's a good way to dissipate that energy. It's just like running in towards your wing. If it's strong, you're kind of disengaging its power a little bit. And that works out pretty well. It's kind of fun too. Mobility is far more limited on skis. I mentioned that before. It's so hard to pivot. Like, you take for granted the ability you have to pivot on foot. It's crazy. So some of these reverse launches that are quite demanding in squirrely winds and, you know, strong conditions, it's just like, oh my God, you know, like, you can't move your skis fast enough to make it perfect, but you really got to be on it and do as much as you can. Yeah, another thing I would mention too that I didn't write down here is if you have pin bindings on touring skis, before you reverse launch, lock the toe out for sure. I've had a couple launches where I've blown my heel out. I luckily didn't blow my entire ski off during a reverse launch, but there was one rowdy launch in particular on upper tunnel, when I was going to try for a combo day. And I got plucked. Like, it was spring air, it was strong cycles. Like, I literally had to pick a lull to inflate my wing. It was like, oh, it's gonna be a good day. So you pull your glider up and you're like, holy shit, it just plucks you. And anyway, all the while, like, I put so much torsion on my ski, my heel popped out. And I'm flying around with one ski just pivoting on my toe, going like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't lose my ski. So from that point on, I was like, no, lock out. You lock your ski out because it's better. A leash, you know what? A leash would help, but then you've got a dangling ski, you know, and that's probably pretty deadly. Like, I've thought about that as well. And like, it's a good thought to be like, oh, at least I have a leash and I don't lose my ski. But then it's like, dude, you've got a, 180 centimeter weapon dangling underneath you, which is like, But yeah, I mean, a lot of guys use leashes, and it's kind of the same thing. If you bail and you have a big fall and you have a leash on, you've got to deal with that ski kind of whipping around. But yeah, that's a good point. All right. So this is a reverse launch. It's pretty tame conditions. The snow is not deep. You've got good mobility, but it's a good example of like how mobile you have to be. Hi, buddy. So winter air. So there's a lot of katabatic air on all these mountains we ski. And I never noticed it until I got out there with a paraglider with the intention of flying down. But the stuff's everywhere where the sun don't shine on most days, even in right side up air masses. Like, you're like, oh my God, it's really going katabatic. You're going to find it more on stable and inverted days for sure. The less wind aloft you have, like the less wind on the ridges, gives a better chance for this cold air to basically build up and flow down the slope. So, it's like, oh yeah, this forecast says it's going to be light and variable. This is awesome. I should be able to, launch off of any aspect and do whatever I want. And then you get up there and you're skinning up this north aspect of this beautiful mountain, and you're getting like 15 kilometer an hour wind in the face. You're like, what the hell is this? Oh, don't worry, it's not real wind, it's just katabatic. So yeah, it can kind of surprise you if you're not ready for it. Another factor is the clearer the sky is, the more radiative cooling happens. Yeah, makes sense. It's the same conditions if you're a skier, especially a backcountry skier. The growth of surface hoar that happens. It's the same kind of condition that you need for that. The radiative cooling that happens on the surface of the snow happens under clear skies. Like, you don't get that same radiative cooling underneath clouds. It's a really cool thing, actually. And the higher you are in the mountain, the more potential that radiative cooling has, as well as like lower humidity days. So the divergence around terrain that I've experienced is like seemingly everywhere in midwinter air. I think it's less so as the season progresses into spring, but yeah, same thing, unstable and inverted days. Like you look at like the rasp and you're like, oh yeah, the wind's gonna be perfect for me to launch off of this beautiful like north-northwest feature at 2,400 meters. It's gonna be great. And then you get up there and it's totally cross. It's just like, why does this always happen? Like, what's going on? Like, I've had that happen so many times. And then it took me a while to kind of start painting the picture. And I can't know for sure. But yeah, a lot of it is just the wind of the day diverging around the cold side of mountains. And a lot of air masses, there's not a lot of lapse rate going on in the middle of winter. Like, the air is quite stable. So there's no real reason for this air to move up and over large chunks of terrain, so it flows around it. And yeah, even on a micro scale on these little shady slopes, like I've witnessed things, as far as I can see anyway, that totally point to just this wind locally in the mountains just diverging around all this terrain. You can even feel it on ridge crest, I swear. Like it doesn't want to go straight up things. It just wants to fling off to the side. It wants to take the easiest route around. In a stable air mass, it's not up and over, it's around. So an exception to some of this funky wind that I'm talking about, I'm not trying to paint a negative picture. It's just, yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind. It's not all sunshine and butterflies. Like, there's a lot of different dynamics and challenging air you'll deal with on shady aspects. But yeah, there's an exception on sunny aspects in a lot of days with a little bit of aligning wind going on in the forecast, and especially with an upright air mass. I mean, an upright air mass meaning like there's a little bit of good lapse rate to the air. You're going to have, especially on sunny slopes, the ability for that air to move straight up the mountain. So you can kind of look at the terrain features and go like, I want to launch there because I can just picture it. From my summer paragliding brain of how upward moving air works, that's going to be a good spot. And you'll probably get that. So yeah, solar aspects, when logistically you do launch off of solar aspects, yeah, they can be absolutely stellar. But at the same time, they can be crap as well. It depends. Prefrontal conditions arrive quickly in the alpine. I've skied a lot of days with the intention of flying where it's just like, oh, I know it's going to go prefrontal. Like, there's a storm coming in. It'll arrive by tomorrow. But, the day at hand here is looking pretty good. It's low wind in the valleys, low wind aloft, all that stuff. It looks great. But then you get, like, the first touch of the arrival of the prefrontal kind of conditions, and then things can change, like, significantly. Like I mentioned a little bit ago, like, yeah, it was only a couple hours it took from, the air and the high alpine and subalpine to be super calm, to the point where it got, like, pretty rowdy, like wouldn't want to be on any size paraglider at all. And yeah, the nature of some of the prefrontal air I've flown through off of the mountains in the winter is pretty, like, can be pretty nasty. Like, I'd be flying in between like two big mountains that are like kilometers away from each other, and then it's fine. Like, I can feel some weirdness to the air, like it's definitely going prefrontal, but then all of a sudden you get this churn. You fly through this pocket of rotor or something, and then you're like, oh Jesus, what's going on here? Like, that can't be rotor. That mountain's 2 kilometers away. Like, what's it? And so yeah, some real stuff happens when storms start to come in. Anyway, as far as directions go, I used to really love the looks of northeast aloft because I could get my speed wing out and then get on this really sexy northeast big alpine terrain, and then, like, yeah, if anything, the wind would come into my face and it would be perfect, but not at all. The northeast aloft, it's stubborn, it's dirty air. Partly the same reasons why it's turbulent in, the summer when you get a northeast aloft, but also just the nature of it in winter. The air is so thick. It's usually colder air. That's usually associated with Arctic outflow, which could be in the valley bottoms as well. Sometimes it's not, a lot of times it is. But it's just all around really, really unenjoyable air to fly through if there is wind in the forecast at all. If it's very light, have at it. I think it's not that I would stay away from that direction altogether, but I wouldn't expect like clean, buttery everything. Kind of the same goes for east, southeast winds. You can associate this direction a lot with prefrontal conditions as well. Doesn't necessarily have to be prefrontal. It can just be, related to where the air masses are around you, where the fronts are and what's coming, what's going. But yeah, I've found east and southeast wind directions to be hard to work with, not only just for launches, but just the air quality. It's kind of like, ugh. Southwest can be super ideal. Like I said a little earlier on solar aspects, like it just coincides with a little bit of thermic air coming up at you, and it's quite enjoyable. It's not usually, dirty air. Light northwest aloft is totally my favorite. I've learned this. It's just my own precedent that I've built. I've had my most enjoyable days and the easiest days finding launches and places to fly off of on high mountains where it's been light northwest in the forecast. I think it's just such a fair weather wind direction. I don't know exactly what it is. It's not, to me, it's not associated to like legit like valley outflow or outflow aloft. It's just, yeah. Anyway, I can't explain all of that. I'd probably have to do a lot of reading to dig into that one. But yeah, light northwest aloft. Go get after it. All right. So yeah, this is a little diagram that I made. And I think it should be pretty easy to understand, but it's kind of what I found on those stable midwinter days. Might be inverted, might be just stable, maybe even slightly upright, but I found so many times, and this is, a combination of things happening really. So picture you got your media wind running right into the face of that mountain. On a cold, stable day, like I said, there's a lot of diverging going around. A lot of that air, mid-mountain or anything underneath these ridge crests, the high ridge crests, it wants to just go around it. So it's going to be cross. Like if you try and launch, over here, and you're like, oh, I'm going to launch on the fall line. Like, no, you're not, because the wind's going to be totally cross. Same with the other side. At the same time, you've got katabatic stuff taking place, and that basically takes this diverging air and then turns it into katabatic flow, and it accelerates straight downhill. And it's not until you get up closer to the ridge crests, I've found, that you'll actually get this wind, this air mass going up and over the ridges. So I've seen this a lot. This is not every day in the mountains on North Aspects by any means, but it's quite common. It's surprising how many times I've kind of pieced together a day and gone like, yeah, this is kind of what's happening. Like, that's so weird. The amount of days where it's forecast like, oh, it'll be perfect to launch anywhere on that aspect. It's like, no. You've got to be above a certain point on a proper place in the ridge crest. It takes a lot of adventuring to kind of piece together these things, and yeah, it's been quite a journey, just kind of picking it apart. And now I've kind of built some, a knowledge base where I can kind of go to where it's good sooner rather than have to problem solve my way through an afternoon of like, oh, what should we ski next that's going to lead us towards a good place to launch. Anyway. Yeah, this is just a little video I made, and it's the essence of skiing and flying in winter, basically. Just a bunch of short clips of skiing and flying. One, two, three.
They're all there for you. Concentration 10 to 4. In the shadows, leave skepticism at the door. Whoa. Rapid tap, tap, table tap. If you've been out one you'd like to talk to,
she goes.
Kathy Catholica. She's in the box.
That's gratifying.
Nice, Johnny!
There's a planned avalanche.
Rocky rock and roller. Sometimes up, sometimes down. In the long run, take the path down on the ground. Between lost belief and gross fear. Have you any idea how much you have? Clairvoyant. Her consultation is 10 to 4. Kathy Catholica. In the box from 3 to 4. In the shadows, leave genitals at the door. Oh, but, tut, tut. Have you any perversion to confess? To the lovely cats on the other side. Clairvoyant. Our consultation is 10 to 4. Kathy Catholica. In the box from 3 to 4. In the shadows, leave genitals at the door. Oh, but, tut, tut. Have you any perversion to confess? To the lovely cats on the other side. Kathy Catholica. She's in the box from 3 to 4. Rocky rock and roller.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes up, sometimes down. In the long run, take the path down on the ground. Between lost belief and gross fear. Have you any idea how much you have? Quite nothing in the psychedelic yogi, he's not a very groovy guru. Psychedelic yogi, he's not a very the groovy guru. Psychedelic yogi, he's not a very you gotta groovy guru. Psychedelic yogi, he's not a very chico groovy guru.
It's the goose poop. You gotta watch for your goose poop. Should have waxed my skis this morning. Maybe that goose poop wouldn't have stuck on my base like that. Gotta keep the goose poop away.
Yeah, that was the last thing I was worried about with my skis on that one. You know, sometimes you're like, oh, no, if I don't land here, where am I going to damage my skis somewhere else? And it's like, no, you're just going to get goose poop on them. Yeah, that was like kind of just in a nutshell, in a fast motion kind of way, like how I envision skiing and flying. Like, as you can see, it was mostly skiing and just flying down afterwards. Like I said from the beginning, like that's been my approach. I love skiing. You know, it's been a huge part of my life. So, yeah, I figured keep getting after it. And as you can see, I like to ski some steeper stuff. I've kind of grown to love that over the years. Yeah, anyway, you can, I think that's the one we just watched. Yeah. So now we're entering the realm of the combo. Yeah, this is like a culmination of everything I could ever, hope for with flying and skiing. Like, I can remember, I think it was 2017, where my buddy Shawnee and I He was that guy in the picture way earlier in the presentation. We had basically, I mean, we're basically still rookies. Like, we've got, you know, a couple seasons under our belt now. You know, totally skiing and flying and thermaling in the summer and all that. But yeah, we were skiing one day in April, going like, man, we gotta, like, look at the RASP tomorrow, Shawnee. Should we fly or ski? Like, what should we do? And then it's just like, oh, dude, I really think, like, we should try both. And I had thought about this for a while by then. But, yeah, we actually pulled it together. And we went home and we got our gear together. And, yeah, we went and sent it. We skinned up to Upper Launch in Pemberton and made our way down the ridge and kind of landed down by Barber. It was a really cool journey. Like, it was a total yard sale. Like, I don't know, we were so young and inexperienced, and we knew it could work, but, like, you know, yeah, just looking back, it was just like we were throwing crap at a wall, go see if it would stick. It was pretty sweet, and it did. Anyway, keep going.
We are in the
So this is us in 2017.
Do you guys have a helicopter?
Just working out the kinks.
Yeah.
Come there and take a couple pictures. Stereo just hang dangling.
Barber there.
How did we get here?
I have no idea.
Okay. We did it.
We did it.
Setting up to launch number 2 of the day.
Yeah, so I got a little ahead of myself there. You know, I'm carrying this, like, I don't know, 100-liter bag on my back, and yeah, figure, oh, let's just air off of this little roll with, like, you know, 20 more pounds than usual on my back. And yeah, that was a really good idea. So I did a little tomahawk there, and it was fun. I didn't lose any gear. Didn't get injured. It was all good. But yeah, that was a pretty moving time for me doing the first poor man's heli, we call it. It was pretty awesome. Yeah, I think I remember. Well, we saw the glider on launch there. I think that was Coco. She came and top landed right before we got off launch there, and she had mentioned to us, like, I don't know, maybe it was a week or two after. She's like, "Oh yeah, the Whistler newspaper did a little article of you guys," and it was this funny little article. And I think Coco put it in there. I don't know, said some words. And it was like, yeah, 2 paragliders launched from Pemberton and were said to go skiing. And like nobody saw them again after that day, but it was said that like a week later that like they did go skiing and they made it back. So it was kind of this funny article. I was like, Shawnee, we got it in a newspaper article. It was amazing. Anyway, it was just funny the way it was worded. Okay, so to get into like more of the details of combo missions, there's different ways you can kind of, approach it. As far as different harnesses and ways you launch. So I'll start with the pod mode. I've never actually done this myself. Some of you might have seen this in videos of, guys out in the Alps doing it or out in the Himalayas or whatever. But yeah, I've rigged up the system in numerous ways and I'm ready to use it. I just haven't gotten the day where I want to fly with my pod and my ski gear. So it's quite complex. I think just the nature of having skis hanging on the outside of your pod harness is, to me, it's a pretty significant thing. Like, for anybody who's ever been like totally jostled or had like big collapses on their on their paragliders on thermic days, like you can imagine what skis would be like having on your harness flopping around when you're like trying to deal with a whole cascade of crap going on. So yeah, I think one thing I would add to this is like, kind of a stretchy, maybe Velcro strap just to fasten them from, going all over the place. Anyway, so yeah, it quite complex, like seemingly simple, but there's a lot of complexities to adding things into your flying kit. Like you change one thing, like I look at just normal paragliding to begin with. If you change your harness, you're flying with a new harness. It's like a whole bunch of new stuff to learn. Even down to where your pockets are, like if you're bringing all your ski gear out to go and try and do this combo stuff and thermal with it for hours, like there's so many little differences. Anyway, yeah, so for pod mode, what I do is rig a mounting system on the side of my pod. So it's totally like rednecking, like it's a DIY ordeal. I'm not aware of any harnesses that come with any prefabricated attachment points for skis, although there will be a year, I bet. Anyway, so yeah, I've kind of rigged up kind of a fore and aft hang point, and they're kind of adjustable, so the skis will be at a good angle for me to launch with on foot. And once I'm in the air, the skis will want to kind of point up a little bit, and I've got a little adjustment thing that you can kind of tilt the skis back down to a happy angle. There's lots of tweaking and hanging in a simulator involved in this. Like, you definitely want to nail it before you get out and commit yourself to the sky. Like, you don't want anything weird happening that you haven't figured out prior. Because, I mean, yeah, as we all know, like, weird stuff happening with your gear in the air during flight when you're committed it's a really, potentially terrible thing to deal with. Practice launch motion. So like for this setup, I'd literally go out, and I wouldn't do it with my wing and go kiting because I thought, oh, that's pretty overkill. I know the exact motions I use to launch a paraglider. So I'd go out in my yard with my pod harness on and my skis strapped to me, and I'd simulate what it's like to pivot from the left or to the right just to see how much the skis swing as I do these motions, and make sure nothing's going to really get in the way. Good thing about this is you've got the use of a speed bar. I know the most classic method we've been using to do these combo missions is just flying with skis on your feet. You don't have access to a speed bar. I have tried to design a little T-bar speed bar thing, and it just doesn't work very well. Anyway, so yeah, the good thing about this method, the pod mode, is you could fly super long distances comfortably, in your comfy cross-country pod harness. It's as simple as that. It's probably a little bit warmer being inside a pod as well. The boot buckles, though, will catch on everything. I've definitely found this. I mean, even when it comes to setting up a launch in the middle of the backcountry, like the lines in your paraglider will find your boot buckles and vice versa. And it's amazing how much you can get caught in ski boot buckles. including the inside of your harness. A lot of these harnesses nowadays have like nice Dyneema structure to them. You know, your speed bar, same thing, like boot buckles are gonna catch. So I know what a couple of buddies and I have discussed is just taking like, I don't know, old leggings, like, you know, getting into an old pair of my girlfriend's leggings and then just cutting a piece of it off so it can go over my boot and kind of eliminate boot buckles from grabbing on things. And I think that's what I would do if I try this method. Yeah. Ideally, you'd stash your flying gear in this mode. I mean, pod harnesses nowadays and like flying gear in general, like if you go lightweight, like it's amazing. If you get like one of these X-Alps gliders or super lightweight, like, you know, just above 3 kilogram glider and a super light, you know, racy pod harness, you know, designed for hike and fly racing, like you can actually stuff these kits in pretty small bags. That being said, realistically, it's still like flying with your whole kit, your pod and your wing, or skiing with your whole kit on your back is kind of like, you can't ski like you normally would. You know, if it's mellow terrain, that's cool. But like for me, skiing with a 70-liter bag on my back is like, I don't want to ski a steep, fun line, free ridey line with that. So I'd usually stash. You know, logistically, I would choose my landing spot wisely so I can relaunch from there and you know, as well access like the runs that I would want to ski. So it takes a lot actually, you know, even flying out to where the zone where you want to ski, you get above it and you're like, oh shit, oh look at all the options. Oh my God, there's so many options. And you kind of got sky vision, so you're like, oh wait, is that or is that? And so you spend a few minutes definitely kind of looking around to see where the absolute best spot is to land and relaunch from and ski from. That's a big part of it. But yeah, the stash it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, to not have to ski with all that flying gear. It just kind of frees you up. And with that method, I always bring a mini ski bag to do laps with. That's what I would do with this pod harness mode for sure. Yeah, just like a super lightweight little 20-liter bag to fit your Avi gear in, a layer, you know, bottle of water, that sort of thing. Yeah, and we'll go to this. So simple mode. This is the most simple mode. I would argue that it's probably the safest mode because of the simplicity. I mean, there's not a lot of complexity you have to add into your setup, you know. So, and it's the way, like I've been doing these combo missions from the start. There was one last year, we did a different method, but yeah, least complex, probably the safest. The open harness is a pretty key thing. Like I wouldn't ever do this in a string harness ever again with a backpack on, because string harness plus backpack with gear in it, it just yanks your shoulders back so much. So you want to have like a proper open harness, whether it's a reversible harness or what, that it's semi-reclined, but you know, obviously has cargo area to hold your gear. A key thing is it needs good leg support. Your skis and boots add quite a bit of weight. So if you don't have good leg support, you're going to be like flexing your abdominal muscles the whole flight while you're thermaling, because your skis want to just pull your legs down. So that's a good thing to make sure if you're ever going to try a combo mission, you know, in this method, in this way, with an open harness, to have good leg support. Yeah, the weight of the skis, like I said, they can take a toll. Even in this method where I'm in my little open harness thing, like the harness is still not designed typically to have that extra ski weight on you. Actually, this is kind of like a custom harness setup. This is actually an Ozone Osium 1 that the pod was removable. So what I did is kind of reorient the seating position. I tore the pod off, but it's super reclined. So like I could fly like I normally do. It was a total familiar experience, like nice and reclined, flying with skis on. So that enabled a pretty good stance. But anyway, I think more commonly someone's just going to use an open harness that's designed to be an open harness. Yeah, again, it's nice to stash the flying gear with this setup. Like, you've got a bit of a harness going on, you've got your wing. Yeah, much nicer to ski with like just a mini bag. But yeah, one of the downfalls is you don't have a speed bar. So I think, you know, unless you're thinking you're really going to be faced with a lot of wind that day, you know, no big deal. Like flying cross country, you know, let's say Pemberton, for example, you know, going out on the milk run, you know, away from Pemberton, like you always use your speed bar on that run because you're more or less into the wind, you know, all the time. Any day you're doing the line, you're pushing into the wind, so you're like, you want to use bar. And then when you get out there and you fly with this setup and you don't have a bar, it's like slow motion. It's like it takes forever to go upwind. It's hilarious. But you know, at the same time, it's a mission to go ski. So you're kind of like, you got your skis on your feet, you're looking down at all this expansive alpine going, whatever, it can take another 20 minutes for all I care. But yeah, that's that. And yeah, I'll get you to switch to this one. So this is the line we did. I've done this a few times now, actually. Like the first time with Shawnee. I did it the next year with Jason, and we skied Barber proper. Did it with James last year as well. But yeah, it's just a little topo map of our track. There's Mackenzie there. This was a really stable day. It took a long time to turn on, a lot of boating around over lower, and it was a pretty low flight out there. But once you got in front of the bigger backdrop of Barber, a nice thermal popped up and we landed. So I'll get you to switch to the next slide, which is a video of James and I doing a cool combo day last year. This is a really good day. Like, the snow was outstanding, top notch. Everything went off that edge. The video makes it look like it was all perfect, but it was a late start. But yeah, we got it pretty good.
There's just enough snow to make ski launching really, really good. 31-minute approach.
Yeah, Jazz, you got it.
But it's pretty awesome.
Pretty ridiculous is what it is.
All right, well, we're gonna switch through here, go ski a line.
convince ourselves that it's in our best interest to do a second lap. So we're going to do a second lap.
I can't remember that.
Hit it, buddy! The day is not finished yet.
What a day for a daydream. What a day for a daydreaming boy. And I'm lost in a daydream, dreaming about my bundle of joy. And even if time ain't really on my side, it's one of those days for taking a walk outside. I'm blowing the day to take a walk in the sun and follow my face on somebody's new mode lawn. I've been having a sweet dream. I've been dreaming since I woke up today. It's tiring me in my sweet dream, 'cause she's the one makes me feel this way. And even if time is passing me by a lot, I couldn't care less about the dues you say I got. Tomorrow I'll pay the dues for dropping my load, a pie in the face for being a sleepy bulldog.
So yeah,
Just
a day like that.
look at it. It's so nice out.
A day like that is definitely a daydream. Like, to me anyway. That's just, yeah, as cushy as it could get. Amazing snow, great stability, good cross-country conditions. But like I was saying before, it was a really late start to that day. Like, we didn't launch till 2-something because it was so stable. We didn't land until 4:30. I think I checked last night when I was looking at the track. It was like we landed at 4:35 or something. We didn't ski until 5 p.m. or just past 5 p.m. So you're up there on Barber. You've just like stashed yourself in the high alpine, and you're like, oh, dude, it's quitting time now. It's like it's 5 p.m. and I'm just about to embark on this ski mission. But yeah, it was incredible. I mean, that was like late April, I think, second half of April. So the days were long. But yeah, it was pretty amazing to squeeze in 2 laps after landing, close to 5 p.m. and get that done like we did. Anyway, yeah, the string harness or the bag drop method, I've been calling it. I saw the guys out in the Alps, some of these really amazing pilots doing amazing things, do this in a couple different ways, and it just looked to make a lot of sense to me as far as, yeah, having a good backpack to ski with, being as light as possible. It just looked like a really, really versatile way to do it. So, yeah, I kind of last spring, I kind of put together a kit and tweaked around with it and figured it out. And yeah, it worked. It definitely worked pretty well. But I will say it is the most complex out of the 3 options that I've kind of, stated here. It's got the most moving parts. Like it's one thing goes wrong with this system and you're like, oh crap, this is a ball It was just a mess. Anyway, so yeah, you definitely want to master this in the simulator. Like, you've got to hang around a lot and, you know, go through the motions of putting the bag on, taking the bag off, you know, centering like how you pack the bag and how it hangs. Like, you don't want your skis to be tilted this way too much or the other way. So you've really got to do a lot of tweaking. All in all, though, like once you get it dialed, it's not a crazy complicated system. It's just, yeah, I'd say complex more in the way that, you know, how many things need to work right. And then it will be a beautiful thing. Anyway, so it's a more ideal objective, or more ideal for an objective that involves skiing with your kit. So the other option, like the video you just saw, you know, I had like kind of an open harness thing going on, full-size glider, all that. Like, it's a big enough package that I wouldn't have wanted to ski that line that we were skiing with all my gear. Whereas with this method, you're able to stuff your full-size glider in like a pretty ergonomic backpack that you would also use for ski touring. As well, you use a string harness for this method, so its volume is like minimal. Like, you can slip a string harness in any backpack, even if it looks like totally full. So that is the real perk of this one. So it kind of opens up the possibilities of like, oh, how do you want to do this? Like, we could totally stuff it in super high, you know, on this mountain, literally ski down from where we land with all our stuff on our back, and then take off again wherever we want, or travel over here on skis and ski this, link it up, and then take off. So you've got your kit with you while you're skiing the whole time, which yeah, it opens up a lot of possibilities. Yeah, XC in a string harness definitely has its differences. This wouldn't have been my first time cross-country flying in a string harness. In my earlier days of paragliding, I tried different crazy fun things, and one was going into, these big hike and flies in the mountains, and, like wanting to go as light as possible and not have a big bag. So I'd literally bring a front mount reserve and a string harness and try and do these little thermic flights and little cross-country flights. And it's like, yeah, it's cool, but it's not really fun, especially when you have a backpack on. Thus, the bag drop method. So yeah, even when you drop the bag, like the string harness actually does become quite comfortable when you have no weight on your shoulders. That being said, it's a total upright harness. So when you're thermaling for hours, weight shifting, doing all the things one normally would during an XC flight in a totally upright position, different ergonomics all around, it's quite different, and it takes a little bit of getting used to. One example, this string harness I have, the hang points are quite high. And I noticed it right when I bought the thing or whatever, but it was like, didn't really make a difference for my mini wing. My speed wing, it kind of did. If anything, for the mini wing, it was nice because, the brake line was higher up, so I didn't feel like I wanted to shorten the brakes to get any better handling out of it. But with the cross-country glider, my brakes were basically situated inches higher than I'm used to. So I remember getting out on this flight that I'll show you on the next clip, getting into the first few thermals of the day and literally being like, why do I feel like I'm close to spin point? And then it's like, oh, dude, it's because my hang points are so much higher than I'm used to, and I'm just flying muscle memory like I usually would, and it's like, holy crap. Anyway, so yeah, a lot. This is it's the Gin Yeti Extreme, I believe. Yeah, it's a pretty good harness. Like, it's probably comfier than other string harnesses, I would say for sure. I've owned a couple others, and this is by far the most comfortable. It's actually got the most bucket seat I've ever had in a string harness, so it was really good for longer distances, just for leg support, so you don't feel like your feet are kind of pulling your legs down the whole time. So lots of differences flying XC in a string harness, but you know what? Like, if you want it enough, these aren't game-stopping issues really. Like, Yeah, I think the biggest thing about flying in some of these combo missions is just the cold. It's freezing cold. Like, we're always going for days where the snow is actually high quality. I don't want to ski, spring crap or like not good snow if I'm gonna do a mission like this. Like, there's a lot invested in these missions, so the snow is usually really good, which obviously means it's still cold in the high mountains. That's what kind of keeps the snow quality high. So anyway, I think the biggest thing you have to suffer through is just being cold. But anyway, so yeah, one good thing about this method as well is you can use the speed bar on these little string harnesses. I'd say one caveat is that you can see in this picture here, like my speed bar is not in the picture, but it can hang down and get caught on the tips of your skis. So I was pressing bar like somewhere close to Squamish, and then I came off bar, and then the second rung of my little speed bar got looped around my skis, and then it's just like, oh no, don't catch on anything before you. Anyway, so it was kind of like, yeah, there's all these little complexities that may happen. Can happen, will happen at some point. But anyway, yeah, speed bar, it works. One thing, launching like this, I'll show you in the next clip as well, but you launch with the backpack on, obviously, and your skis are upright on the back of your backpack, so they're like towering above your head. I try and center them on my backpack, again, so they're not too high above my head, but you got to watch your ski tips on your lines. So you got to be somewhat observant of where your skis are tilting while you're kind of turned and starting to burn kind of thing after you've pivoted. So I think I remember on the launch that we did on Rainbow, my ski tips did brush against my lines as I finished the pivot and started running downhill. So it was like, oh, yeah, that's something to keep an eye on in the future. But anyway, have you go to the next clip. This is just a couple of like dropping the bag and putting the bag back on in flight. It's kind of a little preview of the workload that you have to do with this setup. So right after launch, like, there's a lot of weight on my back right now. It's such a relief to get this backpack off. Like, it's just yanking my shoulders back terribly, and it's really hard to thermal that way. And then, so you dangle it down. There's basically two alpine draws, two Dyneema slings that are hanging off the main carabiners that you just dangle your backpack on. And then, before I landed, I chose to put it back on because I was afraid that if I had landed and the skis caught in the snow, it would whip my backpack and skis back and hit me in the back of the head. So it was a challenge getting the bag back on, actually. As you saw, it took me a little while in that clip. So here's the track from our flight, James and I, last spring. That's Rainbow Mountain, where we started from. And then we had a pretty good, amazing conditions, actually, to fly XC that day, aside from the frigid temperatures. Aloft, it was really, really good flying, actually. I don't think there were too many cumulus in the sky, but there were some, and it was really nice. Anyway, the next clip will just be that edit I made of James and I doing the mission to the Tantalus Zone, which was a pretty dreamy thing. I didn't think it would necessarily happen. But we went for it anyway. I think I'll jokingly say it's one of the things you have to do to get James off the couch and be down for a mission is, like, you got to make it sound really good. So I remember calling James like the night before going like, oh, dude, no, we're not going to do the same old thing as we usually do. No, we got to make this good. Like, let's go and ski in the Tantalus range, James. Let's ski in the Tants. And he's like, okay, only if it's the Tantalus range. And it's like, all right. It's going to be the Tantalus range, and I'm going into it going like, oh, dude, there's no way we're going to make it to the Tantalus range and ski. But we did. Anyway, we were both pretty happy. Actually, one thing I'll add before I play the clip, along the journey there was like really, really high highs. Like, we were both stoked in so many parts of this journey. Then we landed a little lower than we would have wanted. and didn't get to ski like the best line around. So I remember landing like after this whole mission, and James and I were kind of like, was that like a success or a semi kind of failure? Or is this like we were all like, I don't know, we had such big sights for the day. You kind of get carried away and you lose sight of like what you actually just did. Just because you had like these grand like AAA 110% perfect amazing objectives that you were going for, and it didn't quite go as planned, and then it's just psychologically it's funny how you can be like, I don't know, man, like I guess I'm happy. But then it only took a few days for me anyway when I was looking through the footage, and I was like, I should edit this anyway, even though James and I were like not the most stoked on the day. And then I suddenly realized, like, this is amazing. Like nobody's ever done that, like flown XC from Whistler to the Tantalus range to go skiing. It's like, dude, like this was the most amazing day arguably I've had in springtime in the Sea to Sky country. Like that was pretty awesome. But anyway, I'll play the video here now, and yeah, enjoy.
We're hiking up to Rainbow. This is either gonna work today or it's not gonna work. Big bag full of maybes.
Where are we gonna ski, Jazz?
Tantalus, John.
We're gonna ski in the Tantalus apparently.
How serious James was when he's like responding, we're gonna ski the Tantalus, John. He was definitely serious.
Should be good.
It was that or nothing.
The Tantalus range. Climb's getting nice and solid. Yeah. Pyroclastic and Cayley and Mount Fee. We've got the Tri-Cooney zone up ahead. This is Mount Brew. Hopefully it brews up a nice climb for us. This is kind of a one-shot deal. Like, we've flown over a lot of terrain that we can have a lot of good time skiing. But I think we both had our hearts set on the Tantalus. Let's do it, buddy! Unreal. Yeah. Oh my God.
Now we gotta go ski.
Now we gotta go ski. So we're gonna put in a little bit of leg work. Hopefully get a really rad run. 1, 2, 3.
Making a living the old hard way, taking and giving my day.
I can't say it enough. I am a pretty happy boy.
All right. So that was to date, yeah, probably the coolest combo mission I've ever done. But the springtime is upon us, so I'm really hoping to, yeah, do as many of these things as I can. Yeah, they're really, really amazing when you get them done. They're challenging. A lot goes into them. Yeah, can't wait for good opportunities. Does anybody have any questions about, yeah, the combo? Good. Oh, when am I going? Oh, whenever that special window kind of presents itself. It's one of those things, like I've had years. I mean, there's availability too. I usually like to let nothing get in the way of like that perfect 5-star day. Like, so even if I'm scheduled to work, I will blow it off for those days for sure. But yeah, there's been seasons where they just don't present themselves. And again, I'm looking for really good snow quality with a thermic XC day. So it's kind of like you got to have both. You got to have stability, you got to have snow quality, you got to have amazing flying conditions. Maybe not amazing, but yeah, it's yeah, they're not easy windows to come by when you have high standards. But anyway, that concludes my my presentation on skiing and flying. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thanks, man. That was awesome. I really appreciate the scout. Really great. I'm sure if anybody does have the answer questions, they can get a hold of John later. Not today. But it was awesome. Interesting. All right, guys, thanks for coming out.
Thanks.